Welcome back to the Rules of Engagement. Before I get on to game number 3, let me remind you guys, if you're graduating soon and you're interested in pursuing a career in game design or in the esports industry, we recommend you guys to check out www.fullsail.edu/MLG. There'll be a drop-down menu of a couple different programs. You just select one or two or three, and they'll give you fullsail.edu will give you information about their programs in that field. They have a lot of fields: video engineering, audio engineering, game design, video production, 3D animation, all these cool things. They require education before you get good at them. Once you get good at them, you can get a job. And of course, there's jobs in a variety of fields once you have that skill set. So it's a great skill set to get. If you're interested in maybe thinking about pursuing that, only takes a few seconds to get some more information. It's a big choice. The more informed you are, the better of a choice you can make. Also, before I jump on to game number 3, let me remind you guys to send me any questions you have on Twitter to me at axslav. Of course, because after this segment is going to be the Q&A, and I'll use Twitter to draw all the questions from. So, now going on to game number 3. A couple things I want to talk about in this final game of the series are going to be a trick PvZ opening that Sase does. That's really cool. And, it's not something you want to use every game on the ladder, but it's good to mix it in. And actually, you probably could use it most of the games on ladder and win a lot. It's actually a really cool opening. Then we're going to talk about playing safe Protoss for Zerg. And then how Zerg can try to make comebacks in Heart of the Swarm. So we're going to open this up talking about Sase's build, right? And one thing to note is that it was a gateway expand opening, right? And Goswser knows this. So from a gateway expand opening where you don't get the forge, all of your timings will hit faster because your cybernetics core is faster. That means you'll get warp gate faster, right? And it also means that that you can get a Stargate faster, or you can get a robotics facility faster. So whatever tech Protoss goes for, it's going to come faster with the gateway expand. So what's really cool about this is you can use that fact to trick your opponent because your tech hits faster, which means that your opponent has to react to defend that tech. And their reaction, the earlier it comes, the less drone count they have, the more expensive that reaction is relative to their total economy. So what's awesome here is it uses a hallucinated oracle. You can see here, Goswser now is building a spore crawler in each base because he saw that oracle with the overlord. Now, you can do this off of any opening, but it's especially effective when your opponent's worker count is lower because each spore crawler affects their economy greater in a relative way, right? And by now, Goswser might be figuring out it's fake, but the spore crawlers are already built. So it was a really cool trick opening because what's going to happen, because he got the spore crawlers, he was originally getting the roach warren to try to stop the gateway timing, but he delayed the roach production to get the spore crawlers. And now, he's going to start getting the roaches, but it's really a gateway timing hitting him. And as we can see here, the roaches are coming out, but by the time he gets ready to receive that gateway timing, he comes out, it's too late. The gateway units are already by the third base. And of course, with the force fields, he can isolate the Zerg army while he focuses down this hatchery that was already wounded from the Mothership Core. So it was a cool combination of builds there. Of course, Hallucinated Immortal scares the Zerg as well. Even if the Zerg didn't back away, this hatchery would still die. You know, he might get 1 or 2 more Zell kills, but that's not important. What's important is, 1, the trick build slow Goswser's roach production enough that Sase was able to get the hatchery kill, and 2, he didn't lose any of his sentries, which are the 2 most important things. So that's where the recall is very important in this combination. So going forward, Sase, of course, is ahead now, right? I mean, Goswser took a late third, then he lost that third, so it's a late third that he lost, and he doesn't have any cost-efficient tech, right? He has roaches with speed on the way, which versus pure gateway units will be cost-efficient. But Sase, of course, doesn't have pure gateway units. He has a lot of sentries, 2 immortals out. He's going to do great against this roach force. So going forward here, Sase's ahead, and now this is where we want to talk about playing safe PvZ, right? If you're ahead, you want to make sure you don't give your opponent a chance to make a comeback. And historically, throughout most of StarCraft 2, most Zerg comebacks versus both Terran and Protoss come from smashing an army, right? If a Protoss moves out with a small force, or a Terran moves out with a small force, and a Zerg can annihilate this force here, then all of a sudden the Zerg is going to have map control, right? And once they have map control, they can drone up, they can do whatever they want. So that's where the start of the comeback is, from smashing the Protoss force. But you don't have to play so conservatively in Heart of the Swarm. It's still safe to move out in pressure because you have that Mothership Core. So moving out with these forces, even when you're not 100% sure what your opponent has, is much safer now in Heart of the Swarm, as long as you are quick on that recall and you have it ready to go. All right. So you move out here, and it's much safer. You can continue to get more ahead by killing your opponent's bases. Now, let's say Goswser didn't tack for Swarm Host. He didn't build, I guess he built 2 in position, but you didn't spend that money going for the Swarm Host tack, right? Instead, he got 20 more roaches, right? This army right here, and was stuck in the middle of the map, could have been flanked, and in Wings of Liberty, could have ended up significantly behind by getting his army taken out. In Heart of the Swarm, he doesn't have to be so careful about that, because if his opponent committed that heavily to roaches, he could recall out, and he'd be okay going forward. So knowing he's ahead, he can move out a lot more aggressively, because he knows his opponent has to either try to crush his army, and then he can recall out, or he has to tech. And if he techs, he won't have the resources to defend this extra base. So that's exactly what Sase is doing. I would have actually liked to see him be a little bit more aggressive. I think if he just kept going forward, he might have been able to kill Goswser. But it's hard to be that aggressive with your army on creep, because if you're not really fast with the force fields and recall, you can lose a lot of units, and that can be kind of ugly. So, you know, he knows he's ahead because he killed the third base again. And, you know, his third base is set up. And, Goswser is trying to set up another third base, but he's going to come over here and bother it again. All right. So, going forward, Sase is getting even more ahead. And he's doing it by making moves that are safe. It's safe PvZ to do this, and the reason why it's safe is because you have that recall. So you don't have to worry about getting your army stuck. You don't have to worry about losing to a base race because you have that recall. So if you're ahead, you don't have to be super passive. You don't have to worry about making risky moves. You can go ahead and do them because they're less risky now in Heart of the Swarm. So now everyone's like, wait a minute, this is unfair. Protoss can do these moves safely. How is Zerg supposed to get a chance at a comeback, right? And this is where we talk about Zerg comeback ability. So as a Zerg player, you're no longer as able to rely on crushing the army to get map control and make a comeback. But what you do have, you lost that ability. But you gained a greater ability to pick away at their force in the late game, right? Zerg, of course, had a very strong late game in Wings of Liberty, but they couldn't really pick away at their opponent, like get a unit here, get a unit there, and slowly get back in the game that way. They had to just get a big army and then go for major engagement, and hopefully their late game army is very strong, so they would win those engagements. In Heart of the Swarm, if you combine Swarm Hosts and Vipers, you also have a really good ability to pick away at your opponent, right? So right here, he's saying, I need to be cost efficient because I'm behind. I'm going to get Swarm Hosts. What I'd really like to see him do, I would like to see him actually be teching Hive right now. Right now, start teching Hive, right? And then he has extra minerals. You spend those minerals on static defense, and you just use Swarm Host Vipers. That's it. If your opponent starts going air, you make a lot of Spore Crawlers, right? And you use the Vipers and Spore Crawlers to deal with that. And your Swarm Hosts are there to keep the Templar away. Add some Queens, add a couple Infestors if you want some other fun units. But that's exactly what he's going for. He's going for that combination of the stack defense and his Swarm Hosts. And how does Sase deal with that? Well, Sase says, okay, he's going to try to be cost efficient by picking away at me. That's okay. I'll let him be cost efficient. But what I'm going to do to combat this is I'm going to say, okay, we're going to try to force any trades we can get. May not be ideal trades. Actually, this is a good trade. He's getting a lot of Zergling kills here for just an Immortal, which isn't that useful anymore. And a Sentry, which actually are starting to lose their value as well as he progresses to late game. And it's not bad trades. He backs away from the Locust. And as you go forward, your Sase's goal is going to be one thing. He's going to say, okay, you're too weak to move out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to keep your Locust, use my main army to keep your Locust focused on one section of the battlefield. And I'll avoid those, or I'll take a few hits against those Locusts. But as my main army moves out, it'll force you to keep your Swarm Hosts on defensive duty, right? And then while I know your Swarm Hosts are going this way, I can warp in Zealots to attack over here. And yes, Roaches do pretty good against Zealots in large engagements. But what's actually really cool about this, as long as the Swarm Hosts are forced to defend this segment, Sase has greater economy, and in smaller numbers, especially once you have charge, Zealots actually do fine against Roaches, right? If the Zerg is constantly stutter-stepping, then you don't trade so well. But if they're not stutter-stepping, if they're in static fights because they're too distracted by your front army, then all of a sudden you can start trading better. Like the first couple of Zealots, Goswser was my creep. But now if he gets pinned in the corner, small number versus small number, the Zealots actually do decently against Roaches, especially with these upgrades. You can see the Roaches are kept busy. He can continue to warp in Zealots like a madman. Because he's ahead, Goswser has a hard time replacing his Roach count. Goswser wants to do is build the Swarm Hosts and the Vipers What he doesn't want to have to do is keep trying to defend these bases with the roaches, right? So he's going to lose this base, and this base will actually be another couple warpins here, and he can grind out this base. So from here on, Sase wins, because this base is going to die to Zelt warpins, this base is going to die to Zelt warpins, and then Goswser is on one base, Sase is on several bases mining, he's actually going to take a fifth, and he can transition to Mass Air to finally deal with these Swarmos. And you can use the Side Storm he has, right? He's got Side Storm to deal with the Corruptors so his air transition works. Now, if you're a Zerg player and you're like, Goswser didn't make any significant mistakes, besides early game, right? He got behind early, but now he needs to make a comeback. I get behind early sometimes because I'm not perfect, right? I'll make mistakes, I get behind early. How do I make that comeback? Well, the first thing I would suggest is if you want to turtle out to late game, build a lot more stack defense. We can see here, the gas is hard for him to get to replace, but he's got some extra minerals. So roaches can defend okay, but remember, each roach is 25 gas. I would just say, you know what, since I don't want to be aggressive, skip the roaches, just get 5-6 spines in each of these bases. Alright, it's going to take a lot of zealots, especially the spines are positioned well. The zealots aren't going to be cost efficient. They're going to be much worse against spines than they are against roaches, right? That's a fact. So spines are better than roaches at defending the base. Let's throw down a ton of spines. The second thing I would say is, remember how I said he should have teched Hive a long time ago? If he had a much faster Hive tech, he wouldn't have had to get 16 Corruptors. These 16 Corruptors, what they could have been, in gas costs, they're 8 Vipers. And then the 8 Vipers only cost 800 minerals, where the 16 Corruptors cost 2,400 minerals, right? So then you have another 1,600 minerals. That could be a lot more stack defense. And the 8 Vipers, let's take a look. Look at this army, right? If these are 8 Vipers, every time these Locusts come out, let's watch for the next wave, right? What you can do is you can look at your opponent's army, right? So here goes Goswser. Your Vipers you keep back here. As you move in here, what do? You say, okay, the Templar in the back of the army, I'll run forward and snag a Colossus. If the Colossus isn't in range, I'll just snag a Stalker or two, or a Sentry, whatever's in range. The Templar are in the front, you wait for the Locust to kill them, then you snag something. So, the Vipers, what they allow you to do is they allow you to make a comeback. Corruptor, Swarmos can defend very well, but you're really not going to kill that many of your opponent's units. They can always back away. If you add in the Vipers into Swarmos, that's where you can start making the comeback by constantly picking away at your opposing army's force. Also, you have to remember that Vipers are better in the late game against opposing air units, while Corruptors get destroyed by Void Rays and are very weak to Storm. Vipers, while they're weak to feedback, unlike Corruptors, they have the same range. So unless the Templar are in the front, they can usually find an angle where you can try to play a dancing game. Corruptors can never stay out of Storm range. They have to close the distance, they're going to die to Storm. Vipers, maybe they'll die to feedback, maybe you'll get the snags off. Right? It gives you a fighting chance against the air army. You can snag them with your Spores, your Hydras, your Queens. Whereas Corruptors, you have no chance against the air army in the late game. So, utilize the Vipers, right? Instead of getting a Spire, right when you think I should get a Spire to get Corruptors, instead think I should get a Hive to get Vipers. It's the same tech speed, assuming you already have the Infestation Pit, and it's a little more cost efficient. Yes, it's not as great at just killing an opponent really fast, but Zerg comebacks in Heart of the Swarm are based on grinding an opponent out by slowly picking away units with Vipers. They're not going to be, that's basically how you have to do it. So stack defense, Viper Swarmos is your best chance at a comeback as Zerg. Anyways, the wraps up analysis on game number 3. Take a short break and be right on to the Q&A.